everyone. Welcome back, and thank you so much for being here. I have an amazing panel to end with, and don't worry, we won't go over because I have a track and field day to get to about 20 minutes from here, and that is one thing I can't miss for a lot of different reasons. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you guys staying, which I think is going to be a fantastic conversation. So first up, just want to give my two distinguished guests a chance to, well, number one, introduce yourself, and I think some might know Bashir. But then number two, I think most importantly, would like to know what was your favorite game growing up? Bashir, we'll start with you. Oh, Marianne.
All right. Marianne Brelinsky. I'm president of EDF North America. So EDF Electricité de France, one of the largest companies globally that most Americans have never heard of. 167,000 employees. We own and operate 56 nuclear power stations, 40 million customer locations, and I'm responsible for our North American platform. Favorite video game? It was 1989. Santa Claus brought a Nintendo Power Pad. I don't know if any of you remember those. It's a big plastic sheet plugged into one of the Nintendo controller jacks. And not to brag or anything, but you are looking at the world champion triple jumper.
Whoa. Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Well, hi, Bashir Bseirani, the CEO and CTO at Avertra. We're one of the smallest companies Americans have never heard of. We are a technology and product provider for utilities and non-utilities. We focus on consumer-centric industries, so telco, utilities, supply chain, financial services, with a big focus on helping our partners and customers take their awesome ideas and actually create real products out of them. So we help everything from ideation to CX to UI design, all the way out to determining what algorithms they need to build to measure and capture additional trends and behavior, all the way to supporting the applications once they're live. So really excited to be here. And favorite video game, I think two tie up for me. One, Duck Hunt was one of my all-time favorites, and The Legend of Zelda.
I'm a Zelda fan myself.
Yeah.
So we're talking today about the future of work. We're really tying together that community aspect, the employee aspect, and the customer aspect. We've heard a lot here in the last 2 days, now on day 3, of how all these things intersect. And both of these companies up here are working across the globe here in the U.S. and dealing with challenges that are impacting how we're going to work and play, not just today, but the next 5 to 10 years again. So Marianne, I want to start with you. How do you think the hybrid work model, or however we want to phrase it, has really changed our industry?
Yeah, I'm going to maybe do it from the EDF perspective and what I've seen over the last 2 years. In 2018, we moved our headquarters for North America from the energy corridor to downtown because we were having a hard time hiring and attracting employees when you were kind of headquartered in the burbs. And a lot of these young up-and-coming talent want to work and live, downtown in a pretty vibrant area. We took that opportunity in 2018 to upgrade all of the computer equipment, got everybody laptops, even the traders, upgraded the conference rooms, made it a very digital, hot desking type environment where you could work from any location on the trade floor. It does turn out that most Americans like to have a spot. And so you'd find the same people in the same desks over and over again. But the technology was really to not have you locked to a desk, but to be able to move around. Fast forward to early March 2020, and seeing the pandemic kind of in the headlights, decided to tell everybody on a Tuesday afternoon, guess what? We're all working from home tomorrow. Everybody. Except for SCADA engineers and real-time dispatchers. But everybody else, doesn't matter what group you're working from home. And found that most of the salespeople and the traders had no problem. They were used to working on devices and connecting. We did have some issues with tax and settlements, and some folks who had never connected their work computer to their home. Had a task force within a week, closed out all of it. So when the pandemic hit and we sent everybody home for good, we had no issues. The biggest problem we had was finding food downtown for the folks on the real-time desks and in SCADA. We do an annual employee survey, and it's engagement and loyalty and really trying to track how things are going with the employee base. And I will tell you, when we do that in October each year, in 2020, the scores were up 15% overall. It was incredible. People felt like we had gone into battle together. And we had, it was not as efficient as maybe could be, but it was really across the board. Every team scores were up. I don't think any of us anticipated that another year later, we'd still be in that mode. In 2021, what we saw were the engagement scores that actually dropped below the 2019. We had new hires hired who had never been in the office. We had people felt fatigue. And part of, I think, what makes a lot of the energy companies special is the culture and the camaraderie that it brings when you're working in an energetic, very dynamic environment. And it was easy for the people who struggle to really reach out and ask for help to stay engaged. So as we've come back in this hybrid environment, and it's really been focused on, for your group, where do you do your work the best? For traders, this volatile environment we've seen over the last couple weeks, couple months, the traders want to be in the office. They perform better when they're surrounded by their peers. You hear what's happening across the country and across the world. But we still have some folks who say, you know what, I'm doing invoicing and ops, and I can do my job better from home. I don't get distracted. I'll come in for team building and for the group meetings, but I'd rather stay home. So I think part of it is really embracing performance over FaceTime and allowing people to have the choice of where and how they show up to work.
And Bashir, you work with lots of utilities. How did you see them or see them reacting to remote work? And maybe from the customer perspective to tie those two together
so for us. Supporting utilities in the States, Europe, Middle East, and South Africa, there isn't really one answer to the question, right? Some parts of the world, they decided that it doesn't matter what's going on. It's our duty to come to the office and be there every day to support any questions that might come in or customers that might walk by or anything that, could come out of the ordinary because, again, nobody knew what's going on. Nobody knew what to expect. And on the other spectrum, we had some of our customers go 100% remote, except, of course, for the field ops folks, right? Fast forward to where we are right now, actually, I would have guessed that maybe the IT teams could have a good business case to say, hey, let's stay at home. But actually, we're seeing even call center and back office folks, once you got past the initial issues around VPN connectivity and the phones being routed to the right information, making sure your team has the right internet connectivity, everything else just kind of fell into place, and we're seeing a higher level of productivity out of some of our customers working from home, as long as they have the right tools. And now they're looking at the office more of a place to come and collaborate when needed, while you still have the option of flexibility. Actually, one of our customers out in Buffalo, New York, they're a gas distribution company, they just did an internal survey, and I think it was like 96% said they want to stay working from home. So we're seeing a little different spectrums based on geography and localized, I guess, regulations. But mostly here in the States, I don't think it's really impacted a lot of the utilities. They've been able to quickly pivot. They have the right tools. They've been set up to do this stuff anyways. But now actually executing it and monitoring the teams, I actually think has changed. In terms of customer satisfaction, I guess I can look around here. I'll take a survey. Has anybody felt your utility is providing less service to you during COVID? No, I never felt that. I received proactive notifications. Anything related to outages, it was very clear. Things were available to me online. I think everybody here that works for utility, you all did a great job making us as customers feel that you're still there and you care about us, which, made us, hey, if I need you, I can go online. I have a chatbot. I can call you, and you're available to me. Right? And I think that was a great thing that utilities did during COVID and kind of, continue doing it right now.
Just a quick follow-up on there. So can you maybe just add a little bit of color around performed well, but were there still gaps remaining between customer experience and worker experience?
Yeah, at the beginning, I would say yes, it had to be, right? You're sitting at home, you have kids around you, you're taking calls, customers are confused, they're scared, you're scared, right? So I'm sure at the beginning there must have been some level of dippage in I'd say self-confidence more than the experience difference, right? And I think that's where we saw a lot of our utility customers take up mental health programs with their teams, and to really help them, balance out when they take time off. Right? So I don't know if any of you all did that with your teams. We also decided to do that as well too. For example, like no meeting Fridays, when to send an email, when not. So there had to be some level of education on how to connect with each other and to collaborate with each other across your business process area of focus. But for the most part, I would say at this stage right now, where we are right now, you can't tell there's a difference. And that's actually something very impressive.
Very good. So I can't help but shout out to our director of people and culture. So we actually put a 4-day work week model in early in the pandemic for a lot of the reasons you mentioned, and we're still continuing that. Obviously, with the conference, we've had a little bit more on Friday lately. But yeah, all things considered, we're very grateful to be able to lean into that. So Marianne, so there's all these changes going on. So how has these changes impacted the types of people you recruit now, or has it even impacted the types of employees that you're going to bring into EDF, and what types of skill sets might be different that you're looking to or to hire now than you were maybe 5 years ago?
Yeah, so EDF Energy North America, we've got 3 main business units that I'm responsible for. Our generation services platform, so we dispatch and optimize power stations on behalf of customers. We've got over 100 power plants that we dispatch in the U.S. I've got power trading, gas trading teams, and then we've got our retail business, which is the 5th largest in the country. And so the trends actually across those 3 business units have been a little bit different. Gen services groups, where you're talking to customers every day. When we're hiring technical resources, they also need to have strong verbal communication skills. And I think given COVID and just the trends we've seen over the last, it's harder to find people who are really strong communicators, both verbal and written. For the traders, analytical minds, data, when I traded 20 years ago in Texas, when the markets were deregulating, when we first deregulated Texas, there were 3 zones. There was 1 price for each zone every 15 minutes. In a year, there was 100,000 prices you could index stuff to, and we did that all in spreadsheets. Last year in Texas, there were over 26 million pricing points that you could index products to. You can't do it in Excel. You have to be much better able to handle and manipulate data and turn that into information that you can use to present your trading views. And then lastly, on the retail side, I would certainly say this energy transition and transitioning the economy away from hydrocarbons, hiring more people who can help understand intermittency, the physical impacts of renewables on the grid, and explain to customers how to risk manage their total procurement around those renewable resources. So depending on the roles, it's been different, but I do think the trend to being strong communicators and also being able to manipulate a lot of data is key across all 3.
Well, so just a quick follow-up on that too. So as you're seeing job postings, or did y'all change any of that? For example, maybe making sure that you're mentioning hybrid work?
It's one of the first things people ask is, do I have to come to an office? And so part of what we said is, well, yes, because we want you to meet your coworkers, and culture is very important for us. And during the last 2 years, I think individual teams did really, really well. Where teams struggled were large projects that went across the entire organization, new product development, anything that was putting a group of people in a room with a whiteboard. Not seeing any of the platforms really be able to create that kind of creative energy that you can get when you throw people in a room with a couple dry erase markers.
That's excellent. So obviously there's probably some new tools coming into play that people are being asked to use. I mean, between Zoom, Teams, Google Meets, we probably all have great stories of how the different interactions. So I wanted to turn that into something Bashir would love for you to comment on. There's a big tech focus of this conference, but it could also be a bottleneck as well. So where are you seeing some of those where you could actually maybe over-engineer on the tech side, where you actually get counterproductive measures. So, and how that impacts how we work and how we serve customers.
Yeah, tool overload is a reality, right? For sure, right? So whether it's how you communicate and collaborate, all the way to your systems that you use to support your customers on a day-to-day basis, right? So yesterday I was on stage with Lakshman from Southwest Gas, and they were going through a large digital transformation, replacing a lot of legacy systems that they have. I think there was a total of 16 systems in scope of the program, so pretty big transformation. Took around a year and a half. But what that did is it distributed data across so many different systems without taking into consideration what's going to be the impact on my people to actually now start supporting small questions. And how many systems do they actually have to log in? So sure, everybody was brought on, they created training documents, training materials, but what is that going to do to productivity, right? So I don't think anybody really looked at that. They looked at single point problems and said, this will solve this problem, this will solve this problem, this will solve this problem. But I don't think anybody took the time from an organizational change management perspective to take a step back and say, well, what does it mean for different parts of my organization? So early on in the program, they actually realized this, and they kicked off on how to look at single window view type of apps that can consolidate multiple systems together, bring relevant data and relevant context based on your work. So if you're a back office person and you're resolving exceptions, how can the right data for that specific exception be brought to you? Or if you're in the front office, right, how can the specific type of customer load a different screen for you so you don't have to actually go to different tools? So whether the use of SAP's products that they ran or some of the products that they implemented from us, we came up with a strategy on how to simplify the user experience for the workforce to not have them go through multiple apps, right? And we actually saw that also at Puget Sound Energy, where as part of their Get to Zero program, they started implementing many, bespoke solutions to problems, but it also caused external agencies and internal personnel to have to log into 3 to 4 systems just to support their low-income program, right? When those types of folks, you really want to be able to focus on the empathy aspect of that conversation and not say, wait, I got to check in another system to see what's going on here, right? So that's where we also help them, again, with tool overload, simplify that into more single, multi-persona based type of solutions and applications where people just have the data brought to them, right? Because time is really precious. And I'm sure everybody here has a backlog of projects that they're working on, whether you're a utility or a vendor or any type of business right now. So my recommendation to any of you is look at how you can consolidate more than segregate and split all these different solutions to solve 1 or 2 problems that you have. And don't be afraid of the word customization, right? Everybody wants to buy off the shelf, off the shelf, off the shelf. When if you buy too many off-the-shelf things, now you have business processes that are distributed across 6 different systems that don't share logic layers, that don't share data layers, that don't share security protocols, and your maintenance becomes a nightmare, right? So a lot of, traditionally utilities have been afraid of that word, customization, right, or custom build, because we're not unique. There's 20 other companies like us. Well, the reality is a lot of you are unique. Right? Where you operate, the states that you cover, the regulatory environment that you're in, the expectation of your customers, the demographics of your customers, you are unique, right? So sometimes your solutions need to be as unique as you are, and that's not something that people should worry about.
Thank you. They're very insightful. So Marianne, I want to turn a little bit, this last part of the conversation, is you're really talking about the workforce and how we bridge this gap. And being based in Houston, a lot of oil and gas industry, and as things go, the oil and gas sometimes has been taking, I think, an unfair beating. And I know you have your perspectives of this, and just really want to maybe ask the question of how can we actually leverage that as an opportunity and take advantage of those skill sets versus trying to make it a us versus them conversation.
Yeah, every story needs a villain. And very quickly, oil and gas. And I would actually, and I just did something I've been trying not to do, is say oil and gas. That ampersand in between creates, I think it vilifies the industries, which if you look at what is the future for the oil industry and what's the future for the natural gas industry, I think it's time for a divorce. So if you think about oil industry and transportation in the future, last night at dinner we were talking about why don't more gas stations have EV charging? Why are we leaving it up to the governments to put in the infrastructure? If we could get the big oil companies to embrace the EV companies and work together to electrify the transportation fleet, I think we would make more progress in a much shorter amount of time. Same with natural gas as a fuel for our power stations. If we've got natural gas companies working with wind farms and solar, I think that the ways those industries there are way more commonalities, and if we could embrace one another and use our best practices from both, I think that the progress we could make around the in energy transition, which I think still feels a bit too broad, but you could start having real discussions around natural gas, dispatchable fuel, intermittent resources, and having them coexist happily. You might think that would be really hard to do, but I would argue that 40 years ago, beer and cigarettes, that ampersand was there. You would see Anheuser-Busch and Philip Morris. They lobbied together. They did commercials together. You can go back and look at Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble sitting at a bar having a beer and a cigarette. But they have divorced from one another and really taken on different trends and business models. So I think there's a strong, bright future for the natural gas industry. I don't see a scenario where in the next 20 years we're not having to deploy more natural gas resources. I think oil globally, when you look at transportation, we're going to start seeing that, and it's happening. If we could embrace what makes us alike versus vilifying what makes us different, I think we're going to see a lot more progress.
Yeah, thank you. So it's definitely it takes a village approach, and we should leverage those skills. And that's something that the Avertra team has been working hard on, and has an excellent upskilling program. And Bashir, number one, maybe just give the audience a little bit of background of that program you guys have of really helping develop the workforce, but also why was it important for you as a leader to really champion that initiative internally?
Awesome. Well, I'll do another survey. How many people here are having a hard time finding and hiring good resources? That's why. So, as all of our partners and our utilities and our customers now start ramping up more programs and more projects, and everybody's expecting everything to be delivered yesterday, right? We have to be able to have the right type of resources to be able to support that demand, that internal growth expectation, as well as our customers' quality requirements, right? Marianne actually said something so important. As we, remain in this hybrid environment, communication is actually one of the key things that we're trying to instill in our team to know how, because we have a global team, right? So we have folks in the UK, we've got folks in Jordan, we have folks in the Netherlands, we have folks here in the States, we have folks in Dubai, India. So they're all over the place, right? And they're supporting our global clientele. And communication is the thing that we're really trying to emphasize, which is why we built an internal academy that really has two purposes. So purpose number one is to bring fresh new talent in and onboard them through a 3-month program, starting with soft skills, business communication capabilities, then putting them into specified or specialized technical tracks, whether it's UI design, machine learning, low-code development, or whatever it is, and then taking them through internal type of R&D programs before actually putting them on projects with our customers. The second piece of why we built our academy is to upskill our existing team members, whether help them expand their capability, help them be able to maybe learn something new that they had interest in to see if they want to move into that world, but then also train them and have a real big focus on communication, written and verbal, right? Because that's such an important thing in today's world. So for us, it was more of a survival mechanism, right? Because, everybody wants the senior resource, everybody wants the chief engineer, everybody wants the top architect. Well, we're not going to get them, right? Unless you're willing to pay 3 times as much as the other person. So now there's the whole employee price wars that are happening, and we're all creating that, right? Because we're all desperate, we need people, and we're willing to pay more than the other person. So for us, it now became like, all right, so if we want to scale and add, our goal is to get to around 400 people in the next 24 months. How am I going to scale that, right? So it has to be through enabling existing team members, coming up with also better internal culture. I think that's another really important thing, because your academy and upskilling people isn't going to really add much value if you can't retain, because that's the other piece of it too, right? Because if your top people leave, you're scrambling trying to replace them while you're also having this pipeline of new people coming in. So creating a real great culture where people can feel it's open, they're empowered, they have their opinions, they can drive their own autonomous teams and squads to be able to make their own decisions, right? So taking that type of approach, I think, really helped change us. And from a community perspective, depending where we are in the world, we've worked with USAID, World Bank, and a couple other programs where they're funding refugees to be able to come into our program, and actually we train them and then end up hiring them at the end too. So we have a lot of Iraqi refugees, Syrian refugees, we've got folks from Egypt, we have folks from Pakistan. So we've hired a plethora of different types of resources. And here in the States, actually, we're working with the city of DC. We just hired 20 high school students, and we're putting them through a 3-year training program. Year 1, they can only give us around 12 hours. Year 2, they'll give us a week. Year 2, 24 hours. Year 3, 32 hours. And we thought, let's pay them to do this. It shouldn't just be for free. Let them actually feel like they're really doing something and contributing while they're going through high school, right? And actually, I think we're going to be very shocked to realize that high school students today are as powerful as college graduates, and they're probably going to add a lot of value to the workforce and to our culture and to our customers. So we're really excited to see how that test goes out. So if it works this year, we're starting with 20 in September, and then next year we're going to add another 50 to 100 within the same program to try to keep upskilling and helping out our communities any way that we can.
Well, thank you. Well, we're just over time, but I want to give Marianne the last word, your final thought, and maybe wrap it around how all this really impacts the community. And that's a tough one.
I think, so like a lot of people, I binge watched a lot of TV during the pandemic and Ted Lasso. And I think there's some lessons around community and bringing people together versus, it's so easy to find people, butting heads and fighting over things. So Ted Lasso, be curious, not judgmental. I think none of us know what others in our community are going through. As part of our mental health and support for our employees, we brought in some suicide awareness training. And I think the one thing that I learned is, again, you don't know, some of them, people are depressed or hurting, aren't showing it on the outside. And if you see someone and you're worried about them, it's 4 letters. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's, are you okay? And that as a community, if we can do more of, are you okay? Because when people aren't, most often they'll actually tell you. They're just waiting to be heard. So, I think be curious, not judgmental, and look out for our fellow people in our communities.
That's so powerful.
That's awesome. Marianne, Bashir, thank you so much for your time. Great session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much to our fireside chat. Right now, we have a brief video to show you right